I'm Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cornix, and welcome to Yacc, yet another Crowcast where I pick a game, I play it for a week, and then I talk about it. This week's game is Spy Hunter for the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was released in 1987. It's a vehicle combat game, developed by Bailey and published by Midway and Sunsoft, and also there will be spoilers up ahead, just so you know, but first of all, backstory. This game was recommended or requested by Faeriecrypt, also known as Celeste. And this is kind of a funny story, before we came to a closure on what game I was supposed to play for this week, she recommended a game called Renegade. And I was like, this is a combat game, right? No, this is supposed to be a car game. And I was like, she meant Spy Hunter, and kind of a funny thing back and forth with that. So the game starts you out, you arrive from a red truck, like a big rig, and you drive a red and white sports car. Presumably you are a spy or something, so you hit the road, you accelerate by pushing up on the D-pad, and you decelerate by pushing down. And the B button fires sort of a gun on your vehicle. And when you start up the game, you have a timer that goes down from 99, and it goes down rapidly. And first I thought it was like gas, but during this 999 cycle, you're basically invulnerable, so you can crash as much as you want without any penalty. But as soon as that timer hits 0, and if you crash, there is a game over. So this game is about getting us a high score as possible, and if you hit once, you die. You can actually earn extra life somehow, but I never did because I wasn't that good at the game, but I get to that later. So I crossed a bridge and I managed to change some lanes. So on the road there are these other cars, like red cars and light blue cars and motorcycles. And I don't think there is any kind of penalty for gunning those guys down or anything. And then you have the enemy vehicles. You have this blue armored car that doesn't take no for an answer when it comes to bullets. It's basically invulnerable to bullets. You have these limos, which you can shoot out the tires on, I think. And they have like a trigger-happy guy in the back with a gun. And then you have the helicopters. So when you enter these vans, during the mission you can enter your own kind of red vans or trailers. And the top icon of that trailer, if that makes sense, has like a drop, and that's like an oil slick, and you have rockets and smoke screens, which you can cycle through with the select button if you got them. So the first time when I got really far in this game, I managed to get into one of those item trucks, and I got out of it, and I was supposed to drive out in the lane, and I got hit by an armored truck and I exploded. And due to my timer, the 999 reaching 0, I exploded directly and I got a game over. I was like, didn't even have like a second to react, and I exploded. I was like, oh no. So I tried and tried again, and I managed to get a little further. I managed to get through the limousine part where this trigger-happy guy in the back seats tried to shoot you, and I managed to pass that, and I got to some helicopters, or just one helicopter. And the only thing that can destroy the helicopters are these rockets. Otherwise, you have to avoid their grenades that they drop. So I figured out a way to cheese the game, at least the beginning part. You get behind a blue armored truck, you keep it like right in front of you, and by doing so, no other enemy vehicles will spawn until you get into the red truck, and that's when things get a whole lot more difficult. So I never got too far into the game. I got to this green field area with pink trees, and I think the pink trees is just a result of the limited color palette. And my high score isn't that hard to beat. I got 18,315 points. Which is not a whole lot if you take a look at other guys that play this on YouTube, and they go way fast. Also, I have no idea how they do it, because this game, for starters, doesn't have a pause button. So if it's just one continuous playthrough, and if you stop to do something or someone calls you, you can't pick up the phone, you can't pause, it's just one continuous run. It's kind of crazy and stressful. So if you're really good at this game, you'll eventually end up in the desert and later in a snowy landscape. At least I think it's snow, but it was really hard on the eyes, really. Maybe it's something to do with the game being played on like a modern TV, because the white is actually super bright. And there's also this section where the road starts to curve a bit. That's how far I got, and it was impossible to keep you have to go really fast, and the road kind of curves, and you're hunted by limousines or armored trucks and helicopters. You're supposed to dodge the missiles and the armored cars. And later in the game, the armored cars actually get like spinning blades on their tires. You just bump into you and you explode. It's a real stressful game. I wasn't angry or anything. I just find it very fun to play for some reason. You know, you get a little ahead each time you learn the game. It's easy to pick up basically, but it's hard to master. So gameplay. Try to survive as long as possible to get the best score as possible. Control. The D-pad moves the spy car around. If you press up on the D-pad, you accelerate. And if you press down, you decelerate. And the A button uses the special items, which you can select between the select if you got them. And then you got the B button, which fires a gun in front of the car. And then the start button does nothing. I would have really liked if this game had a pause function because it's really stressful. And I said about like the phone call and everything. I think I got like some notifications on my phone. I was like playing and I was like, what? And I crashed right after that. So a pause button would have been perfect for this game. Graphics. This is an early NES game and it actually was ported from the arcades. I think the original game was made in 1983 and the NES port came out in the early NES cycle in 87. So it's very simple graphics, but everything you see on screen, and I said this before, is perfectly represented and you know exactly what it is when you see it. So it's not super impressive, but it gets the job done. Sound and music. Naoki Kodaka made the NES version of the soundtrack for this game. And I shouldn't say soundtrack, it's actually just one track if I'm getting this right. It's like a rendition of like a movie theme, like The Smoking Gun or something. And it's really like it doesn't need a soundtrack because you can just hear like the vehicles and the power-ups and everything. You don't need a soundtrack really. So yeah. Easter eggs, secrets and glitches. There's a code that you can punch in at the title screen. You hold A, B, select and start. And when the game starts up, you have all the power-ups like the oil slick, the rockets and the smoke screen. But as soon as you crash, you lose all those special goodies. So there is a thing you can do with the music. It can glitch out. I think it has something to do with when two tracks try to play at the same time, like sound effects, but I'm not really sure. Just really weird. And there's also a way to clip out of bounds. I saw this speedrunner use this tactic. He just got off the red truck at the beginning of the game and he drives straight into the underbush. And normally what's supposed to happen is that the car is supposed to explode because you hit like a wall or whatever. But he just drives like straight through. And I think the point of this speedrun is just to get the highest score as possible with like the lowest time variables, because this game actually loops at a certain point, and this game was made for the arcades. It's actually just like a get a high score kind of game. So there is this other, well, it's not a secret, but if you take the right turns and the right lanes and whatnot, you might end up at the boat section and you exchange your boat, or the car for a boat, I mean. You end up in a canal and you fight these armored boats and whatnot. And it's kind of a cool thing because it's like a specific kind of sequence you have to do it in. And I didn't know this until I watched like a playthrough on it on YouTube. A really cool playthrough, I must say. So in conclusion, I wrote, yes, absolutely. This was a good pick by Faeriecrypt, or also called Celeste. This game for me is the right amount of frustration. I never was angry or anything at the end of a session, because usually you crash a bunch of times and then you start to learn the mechanic and you get a little further up ahead and you want to play it more and more. So this is actually a game that I like to play, even though I'm not really good at vehicular combat games. And I mean, it's just a fun game. Try to get as high a score as possible and have fun with it. It's not anything deeper than that. It doesn't have like cutscenes and immersive stories and you have to save the girl in the end or whatever. It's just a fun distraction from ordinary mundane life. So thank you, Celeste, for picking this game for me. So anyway, thanks for listening and or watching, and take care.